Okay, cool. Can we all see my screen? Al, give me a thumbs up. Top man. Cool. Right. So, bit about recovery, fitness, fatigue. We're gonna understand we're gonna go into the science of it a little bit. I'm not gonna bore you too much. I'm just gonna try and keep it basic. I'm gonna try and keep it as brief as I can, give you a little bit of value so you can start implementing some of this stuff today. I've had a lot of conversation with people more recently, about obviously training, overtraining, all that sort of stuff. And I find I'm repeating myself, which isn't a bad thing. But if I just make a video, make a resource, you can all come back onto it. We can all talk about it. Then obviously, then we're all clued up on it. And for the guys who are obviously going into high rocks, or any type of like marathon training or any competition, obviously there's going to be a lot of value behind this as well. But also the mums and dads, the guys who train 3, 4 days a week, like there's going to be some value in this as well. So let's kick off into it. So we're going to go into fitness and fatigue. So fitness versus fatigue, talk a little bit about that. We're then going to go into your recovery. So recovery processes and like things you can do, things you can start implementing. We're going to talk a little bit about periodized training. So that's just planned training. Exactly what we do at SOS. I'm just going to tell you exactly why we do it and why it's important. And then if there's any questions at the end, we'll have a little Q&A. Okay. So, fitness and fatigue. Just going to start us off with this seesaw. I'm sure we've all been on one before. Essentially, right, fitness and fatigue, it all relies on balance. Okay, so if you tip to one side, it's going to sway. Same with the other side. Okay, so you got fitness on this side, you've got fatigue on this side. Yeah, if one outweighs the other, there's a thing going on. We need to find balance. So when I'm going through this today, or if there's anything that you want to take away from today, just remember this. Remember your seesaw. Okay, it's all about balance. So defining fitness. So Cambridge would define it as the condition of being physically strong and healthy. I prefer this definition here, the quality of being suitable to fulfill a particular role or task. So for, the guys who have kids, guys who just, want to train just for health benefits, like what does suitable mean? What does suitable and what does fulfill mean? How do we want to suitably be able to live our lives? If you're walking up the stairs and you need to hold onto a rail because your legs are so sore from yesterday's workout, that's not really being suitable, is it? So it is that fine line, isn't it? I like to just prefer it or define it as sort of that adaptation through stress. An adaptation, so you create a stress. The stress is training. The adaptation then is what follows. So if you want to get bigger biceps, you train them through a full range. You create that adaptation, that rest. Okay, you'll then have bigger biceps. That's essentially what that means. Okay. Now with fatigue, just quickly, just to define it, the extreme tiredness resulting from mental or physical exertion or illness. So, key word there is mental. It's not just physical, it's mental as well. So, we'll talk a little bit about stresses and fatigues outside of training, because with training, recovery, fitness, fatigue, obviously, yes, it's the output that we're putting into training, but it's the stuff that we also surround ourselves with, work, social lives, what we see, what we hear, what we're constantly surrounded by will all come into factor into this big sort of fitness and fatigue. Okay. Now, what I like to do first is sort of go over what fitness and fatigue is through this graph. Now, this is probably the most accurate way of actually showing you what this is. If I just move this over here. Okay, so if we go left to right, on your left, you've got your training stimulus here. You've got your training stimulus here. So your training stimulus is your training day. It doesn't matter if it's upper body one or if it's metabolic team training. That's your training stimulus there. And then if we look at this line here, this is your recovery time. So this is days essentially. Okay. Your purple line is your fitness. Your green line is your fatigue. And then the blue line here is your preparedness or probably more performance. Okay. So what tends to happen, you have your training stimulus. So this is the days or the day, immediately pretty much after the training session, your fitness will start to take a decline. That's normal. That's what happens. Okay. As a result, as a by proxy of that, your fatigue will then start to climb. Obviously, you have that sort of that relationship where they sort of come together. I did make a reel on this, I think last week, which will show you will show you a little bit better on what I'm talking about here. And then over time, then, over the next 12, 24, 36 hours, however long it takes you to recover, you're going to get to this point here. They're all going to meet in the middle. And then hopefully, with good recovery here, it's then going to go back the other way. So over time, what will happen here? This is essentially what the last graph was, just over time, over a longer spread of time. What happens is you'll have your stimulus, so that's your training day right here. You're then going to have that fatigue. You're then going to recover from that fatigue. You're then going to have that adaptation. So if you like, this black line here is homeostasis. So that's like the normal. So when you train, you want to go over that sort of that state of being normal, if that makes sense. That's where you see that adaptation. That's when you get stronger. That's when you get fitter. And over time, you'll have that adaptation. You're then going to rest again. You're then going to have that fatigue. You're then going to rest. Adaptation is going to be bigger. You're going to rest, adaptation. So over time, if this all makes sense, over time, the adaptation gets bigger and better and better. So over time, you get fitter, stronger, healthier. I hope that makes sense. And then if we refer that back to here, where a lot of people go wrong, including myself, I've done this before. It's speaking from experience. When I was playing rugby and all that sort of thing, even in powerlifting, we spent a lot more time where we actually close this gap. So the day between the first training day and the second training day, whatever it is too small. So then what happens is you're always in this position where the line's always going to be close or they're going to go the other way. Fatigue will start to raise higher and then fitness will start to drop. Okay, so that is where essentially where you feel like, you're training hard every single session. It feels like you're improving, but in reality and what the science here is telling us, it's actually not true. So when we talk about training, what is the goal of training? Like, what are we trying to achieve? It doesn't matter, what we're doing, whether it's running, cardio based, conditioning, team training, strength training. It doesn't matter what it is. We're trying to create some sort of adaptation. Okay, we're trying to create some sort of response where we are here and we want to get to here. We want to get a little bit better. Okay, so we want to bridge that gap. That's where the adaptation is. Okay, to create that adaptation, you're going to have to perform. Okay, so to be able to perform, you're going to have to be able to recover. Okay, so without recovery, you won't be able to perform. Without the performance, you're not going to be able to create that adaptation. Does that make sense? So the key link here, it doesn't matter how hard you train, doesn't matter how hard you think you perform. You could be hitting PBs every single session. But again, going back to that analogy I used earlier, if you're struggling to do your basic things, if you're not suitable for, your day-to-day life, it hurts walking up the stairs, for example, then you're definitely not going to be able to perform. Okay. So to fix that, we need to recover. Okay. So next one then, fatigue and how it masks your fitness. So what sort of happens, right, is when you're fatigued, your performance will obviously start to drop. Sorry, that's what we explained on the graph just now. You might feel a little bit weaker. You'll feel a little bit slower. You may feel a little bit less coordinated. That's pretty much normal. But over a long period of time, if you don't respect the rules of recovering, if you're not recovering enough, what tends to happen is your fatigue will start to suppress, if you like, your body's ability to express the fitness or your strength. Okay, so like I said, we've all got different goals. It's not just about training in the gym. It could be fitness, whatever. It all applies to the same sort of thing. So when you're suppressed, when you're unable to express that force, when you're unable to perform repeatedly over a long period of time, so it's not just about PB and all that sort of stuff, but it's about how you're feeling, how you're performing day to day, especially in your day-to-day life. You're going to start falling into this trap known as overtraining. Now, overtraining is the extreme end of the spectrum. If you're not too sure what overtraining is, another word of it is burnout. Okay. Or another definition of it is burnout. Is when you're completely just blown. Okay. So that's the extreme end. But for this definition and for today's sort of masterclass, I'm going to use the extreme end because some of us do show the signs and the symptoms of falling into it. So I want you to be aware of where it is and where you are and how to obviously rid that. Okay. So an example now of a good example of overtraining is, imagine now we're on our GBC program in SOS. Imagine if we did the same program for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. You'll be able to probably lift the weights, but you won't be able to perform. So everything will feel harder. It'll feel heavier. You'll need longer to recover. You'll come in Monday, Tuesday will come, you're back in for another workout, and you're just completely blown. And that will repeat over and over and over again. And that's exactly what happens when we overtrain. Okay. And we don't want that to happen. That's why our phases run in 3 week cycles. But it's not just about our program and about how we deliver that program and how we use science to deliver it. It's also about your ability to know when to push, like when to push in the gym and when to pull back. Okay. And I'll talk to you a little bit about, different sort of recovery methods or different ways of doing that in the gym, just so you don't feel like you have to take a day off in the gym, if that makes sense. Okay. Now, before I move on to the next one, if fatigue, if the fatigue and everything persists over a longer period of time, it will lead to this big thing here, overtraining. Now, with the overtraining, it like I said, it is the extreme. But some people, I do feel I've overtrained before. I've been in a state of burnout, so I know exactly the signs and the symptoms. Um, what happens is your body will have a longer period of time to recover between sessions. We're talking like 3, 4, 5 days. If you're still hurting from Saturday's team training workout, for example, you could be falling into this sort of category. So something for you to be aware of. And like I said, it is easy to fall into the trap. You got your high training loads, you're ignoring your basics, life stresses, you're misinterpreting effort. So with your high training loads, so you're training hard every single day and you're not taking the foot off the gas. So like I just said earlier, you need to know when to push and when to pull back. So we always try and encourage people to start a little bit heavy, or you guys know our methods, but at the end of the day, you've got your own stresses, your own fatigues, you've got your own understanding of how your body works. Sometimes when we try and push that, it's not always going to work. I know when I train, I'm not hitting PBs all the time. My train loads, I have to manipulate very, very carefully, and I do that every single session. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. But yeah, so with your high training loads, you train hard without taking the foot off the gas. What happens then is the accumulation of fatigue builds up faster than what your body is able to recover. Again, that's that overtraining. Okay, now the next one then, ignoring the world-class basics. Now I pinched this from somewhere else, so don't quote me on it. Your world-class basics, good sleep and good nutrition. If you are getting 6 hours or less per night, or you struggle falling asleep, or you can't, you can't get sleep, or you have interrupted sleep, and then as well if you're not fueling your performance, so pre-workout, post-workout, day to day, you haven't got a structure, you're not the recommendations we've given you, or you're just not eating for whatever reason. Obviously, if you ignore those world-class basics, you're going to fall into that trap. Next one then, big one for a lot of people, well, for everyone pretty much on this call, life stress. We've all got different types, work stress, family, kids. It all plays a part. So essentially, if you manage these stresses through whatever way that is congruent to whatever you can do, you will make your life a lot easier, if that makes sense. But if you don't, if you're stressed out with work, you're working silly hours, you find yourself restless, you're always thinking about it, especially when you go to bed. These are the signs that start playing. This could lead into that overtraining realm, okay? The last one then is your effort. So you're mistaken feeling tired as a sign of working hard. So you train today, you go back in tomorrow. At the same time, it's not in the morning. Let's say it's like a 5:30 session. You're feeling tired. You think you're feeling tired because you worked hard the previous day. Well, yes, you have. But if this is over a longer period of time, if this is, every single day for, a good couple of days, a good couple of weeks, that's a sign that your body's telling you to back off. And if these all resonate with you, if all these examples resonate with you, then we need to do something about that ASAP. It's not, you shouldn't really be focusing too much about your training. You should be focusing on more of your recovery. And I've had the conversation with loads of people before. If you're getting less than 6 hours sleep a night, you're hurting from a workout or a training session that you did 5 days ago, 4 days ago, then it doesn't matter your calories, it doesn't matter your macros. It doesn't matter whatever diet you want to follow. It doesn't matter if you hit a PB yesterday. We need to focus on that because that is more important. Because if you don't address that now, later on, even though you may not feel it now, later on you'll start having these symptoms, and they're all going to start showing and manifesting. Okay. So the signs that you are overtraining. Now, these resonate with me. So this comes from personal experience as well. But again, a little bit of this is actually from science as well. First one, decrease in performance. So, your bread and butter is what I like to call the bread and butter, the normal weight, the normal prescription you go for, or if you're doing chin-ups or whatever it is, the normal thing that you do in the gym, even the warm-ups, they might start feeling heavy and they feel heavier than what they did the day before. Okay, so for example, last week, let's say we did squats. This week, you start on the same way and it just feels twice as hard. Okay, now that's a sign. That's one big sign, especially again, if it happens over a long period of time, that could be a sign that you're falling into this trap. Okay. The next one, then again, it falls sort of hand in hand, is persistent soreness. So DOMS, if you carrying DOMS for a prolonged period of time, then that's a sign. Okay. I put in here no pain, no gain, because it's far too often you see on social media or films, TV, whatever, that if you're not in pain, you're not gaining, all that sort of stuff. It's a bunch of rubbish. Don't listen to it. It's don't fall for it. In reality, it doesn't exist. Okay, so you do need some form of pain, yes, to obviously to progress through whatever means, obviously through aerobically, fitness, through strength training, through obviously hypertrophy. You feel that burn your muscles, yes, obviously that's true. That way is true. But when you have this persistent soreness for a long period of time, and that no pain, no gain mentality is reigning in your head, take it out. Yeah, that's not the way you want to be training. That's not healthy. Okay, so if that's in your head, you've got to take it out. The next one then, mood change. So if you're mentally drained, or you're just irritable, it's like a lack of change, you're quite snappy. I've been there quite a few times. I'm not afraid to admit that. And it's a sign of overtraining. Another one then as well is lack of drive. So your motivation just starts slipping. I've had plenty of conversations with clients and members, even my own one-to-one clients, even some of my mates. They have that lack of drive. They just don't really know what they're training for, and it's affecting their work as well because the alarm's going off. They put on snooze. It just sort of snowballs. Okay, so when you have that lack of drive, ask yourself: are you respecting the rules of recovery? Are you recovering as best you can? Because that could be one of the bigger giveaways. Okay, and then next one then is sleep. So sleep inconsistency. I've already spoken about before. Struggling to sleep or struggling to stay asleep, or you're waking up, going back to bed, waking up, going back. You just can't get that consistent routine. And like I said, guys, if you're getting less than 6 hours per night, it's not going to help. Ideally 7 to 9 hours. I know obviously with work and everything, like again, family, kids, commitments, it is quite hard, but if you can find a way where you can nap in the day, or have some, 20 minutes, whatever it is. I speak to so many people and, it is hard, but at the end of the day, we want to try and optimize your experience the best you can. We want to try and optimize your progress, if you like. And if you're sacrificing, a 20-minute gap where you could potentially nap, for watching Netflix, maybe, then maybe you need to reevaluate something. Okay, that's just my opinion. That's what I would sort of suggest. And then the last one then is regression. So you plateau in training. So I put their hammer in the same nail. So you're constantly training hard without seeing any sort of improvements. Um, that's definitely a sign that you're falling into that trap. Plateau, it's hard to come away from it. Um, it won't necessarily happen as much on the program, as we change our program every 3 weeks. But if this has happened to you previously on a different training program, or you trained yourself, let's say you were doing the same variation of a bench press for 6, 8 weeks or whatever, and you don't see any progress, it's probably because you hit a plateau, you're regressing. So it's time to move on, or it's time to reevaluate your strategy, your recovery strategy. Next one, big one here, which doesn't actually get spoken about a lot, especially on the gym floor. I've spoken to a couple of people about it before on the gym floor. It's definitely not spoken about enough um, on social media or out there in the world, and that's cortisol, and it's the stress hormone. Now, we all need stress. We all need the stress hormone. It helps maintain that metabolism in your body. Whenever you train, well, especially after you train, your cortisol levels are quite high. That happens naturally. Your body's in a state of stress. We talked about stress earlier. Your body's in a state of stress. Now, cortisol is catabolic by nature. Okay, it's a catabolic hormone. So being a state of catabolism, so being catabolic is breaking things down. So it's breaking tissue down. So if you think muscle cells and muscle cells and amino acids, the breakdown of protein is breaking things down. Okay. Now, if you're in an anabolic environment, it's not steroids. Anabolic environment, that's where you're building things up. So it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Now, the reason why I put it there, or the reason why I'm talking about now, is when if your cortisol levels are elevated, especially for a long period of time, you're in a catabolic state. So your body is breaking things down. Now, the first thing it's going to break down is your muscle tissue, your amino acids, your amino acid profile. So it's all negative. So you're in the grand scheme of things, you're not going to be able to build muscle if you're constantly stressed. Yeah, I've spoken to many people about this before. If you manage your stress outside of gym, obviously inside gym when you're training, when you're recovering, in between your sessions, but also outside as well. If you're managing that stress, because stress just isn't training, it's the outdoor factors, it's the work, it's life, it's all these personal sort of interactions, or this personal sort of environment that you have. That's all stress. And if it's constantly elevated for long periods of time, you're going to be in a state of catabolism. So you're breaking things down, which we're here to train. We're here to build, essentially. So it's just a negative environment to be in. We want to be in that anabolic environment. Okay. Another reason why elevated sort of cortisol is a negative, you want to try and avoid it, is a weakened immune system. I've spoken to many people who are just constantly stressed. Again, I've been there so many times. When I'm stressed, I start getting ill. I start getting under the weather. I start getting ulcers. Have a banging headache in the back of my head. I just feel run down. Everything is just completely like I'm just shutting off. And it's because I'm stressed. I know what it is. I'm stressed. I take all the vitamins, I take all the vitamins I need. My diet is on point. I recover as much as I can. But if my work life is getting a little bit too much, or if I'm training a little bit too hard and I'm not, listening to my body as much as I can, then I'm going to start getting ill. My immune system's going to take a hit. And then that's that negative cycle then where you have to take 2, 3, 4 days off training. And then we've all been there when we've try to come back to train, whatever it is. Even, going out for a walk is a challenge because you've got this pulsating headache. You can't breathe properly. It becomes a challenge. It's a horrible experience to be in, and that most of the time is because your cortisol is so elevated for that long period of time. I also want to sort of touch up on doom scrolling. Go back there. So doom scrolling, you may or may not know, is essentially we're all on our phones. We're all on, social media. We're all scrolling. We all see things. Now, doom scrolling is, this constant influx of negative news. You turn on Sky News, BBC News, whatever. There's always something negative, whatever it is. Elections, wars, whatever it is. And there's actual studies coming out now to suggest that these things all contribute into a wider range of stress, and a heightened anxiety and stress. It's all elevated. So even when you're not training, you could just be sitting on the couch. You could just be, just scrolling through Twitter. I do a lot, and I just see a lot of negative stuff. And this can play in your head, especially if you're constantly, you got your phone, you're constantly on your phone. All you ever see is this negative stuff. It's constantly around us, and that can play a big role in that wider picture of cortisol and stress. Okay, and there's actually been studies about this. I can't quote it. I think it's from 2018, I believe. And they basically suggested that overload, so overloaded, this influx of negative news and things you see on social media, is associated with an increased emotional stress. So when you're emotionally attached to something, it's going to prolong it. It's going to have that wider impact. So you feel overwhelmed, or you feel sort of like afraid of the future. I know it may sound a little bit off topic with training and recovery, but these are the things that we're all in that environment, because we've all got phones, we've all got TVs, we've all got laptops, we all see things that get sent to us. It's just this wider thing that's constantly around us in our head. So if you have that adverse reaction to these things, over time, you're going to have that negative response, which is going to lead to more cortisol. So it's definitely something to be aware of, especially if you do find yourself, in this deep, dark pit where you're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Try and get away from it if you can. Now, to sum up, fitness and fatigue, just think of that seesaw. Yeah, think of that balance. If there's one thing to take away, just remember the seesaw. Find that balance, guys, because it's really, really important. Okay. Now into recovery. Okay, so your recovery, as defined here, is a return to a normal state of health, mind, or strength. Okay, so I like to define this as when the body grows. So when you get stronger, when you get fitter, when you see some sort of adaptation. Now, without the adaptation, again, adaptation could be getting stronger, running a faster 5K, just in general being healthier. Okay. You can't have that adaptation without the recovery. Okay. The stress here, that's the training. You're then going to recover. You're then going to have that adaptation. So the recovery is the important piece of the puzzle. Now, I read a quote from uni, I think this was on my laptop, and I found it a couple of days ago. I can't remember who said it. Train hard, but recover even harder. I mean, that just sort of says it all, doesn't it? You train as hard as you like, but you need to recover even harder. So take your recovery seriously. Okay. Now, strategies and practical applications of how to recover. Obviously, you got your sleep, which we'll talk about in a second, and we've already mentioned your nutrition, but a couple of few bits we can go through. Obviously, if you're wearing wearable tech, if you're wearing a watch, or some sort of like heart rate monitor, whatever, anything to measure your resting heart rate, that's going to be a good way to find out if you are in a constant state of stress or not. Now, if you don't have access to a heart rate monitor, you don't wear a watch, you can easily just check out your resting heart rate. Just find that pulse just below your wrist, um, count to 15 seconds, or put a timer on 15 seconds, count the beats, multiply that by four. That is your resting heart rate in a minute. Now, why that's so important is, especially if you've got like an Oura ring or a Whoop, it will notify you on your phone. But if your resting heart rate first thing in the morning is a little bit higher than what it should be, so if you know, and if you understand it, if you monitor your heart rate, if you wake up tomorrow morning, let's say, and the resting heart rate is a little bit higher than what it normally is, and again, you notice a bit of a trend where it's trending higher and higher, then this could be a sign that you're overreaching, you're overtraining, or you're coming down with something. It could be a way of your body telling you that, you're at that point where you're going to need to start taking recovery a little bit seriously. Okay, it's not how to recover, it's more a measure of how to recover, okay? So there's one way of doing it. Subjective measures. So you could rate your mood or your energy out of 10. I asked the guys on the floor loads of times, like, how's the body battery feeling? How are you feeling out of 10? Give me a rating. If you're sort of like, you wake up first thing in the morning, obviously you'll be a little bit groggy, but give yourself like half an hour, 40 minutes to actually wake your body up, have a little bit of water, and then ask yourself, how's the body feeling? If you're at like, 7 and above, then yeah, great. You can take this training hard. You can really, really go for it. And you can really like, you can try and send it, go for PBs or whatever it is, and just go for that training session, have a really, really good intent with it. Now, if you're, so let's say like a 6 and below, and again, that's a consistent trend, then, you need to start easing off, whether you need to be sleeping more, whether you need to be easing off in your training session on that day, or it could be other method. It could be other things going on. It could be your stress management, your stress from work the day before. All these things, well, you got to take into account. So rate your mood and then rate your energy, because obviously they do play off each other, and give it a rating out of 10. If it's a 7 for both, which for some people can happen, it's not like it won't happen, but if it's like a 7 or 8 and higher, whatever, then yeah, like great. You've obviously recovered well, you're managing your stress well, you're sleeping well, you're eating well. So yeah, that training session, go for it. If it's below, then and there's a bit of a trend, today, tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, you see a bit of a trend, and take it seriously, write it down, put it in your phone, monitor it, because then you can measure it. And if there's a bit of a trend, like a negative trend, then there's something that you need to look at in your recovery routine, or your sleep, or your stress management. I've already mentioned sleep, 7 to 9 hours daily as like a non-negotiable. I know in today's world that's never really happening. I don't know anyone who has 9 hours sleep. Um, but there are other options out there. For example, napping. Like I said, if you've got an extra 20 minutes and you'd rather, watch Netflix than nap, let's say, then there's something that you can do right there. That's an easy fix. Netflix can wait. You need a nap. You need to sleep. That's like a non-negotiable. Okay. The next one then is something that I've spoken to a lot of the guys about. It's called auto-regulate. So auto-regulating your training. This is from my sports science background, but essentially all this is a day-to-day change in your training intensity or volume. So obviously we've got the program, but what I want you guys to think about is the program we catered to you. The program is like a structure, it's a spine. It's never set in stone. It's always set in pencil. Okay. So let's say now tomorrow we got 4 sets of 10, and you've just rated your mood. It's like a 5, your mood and your energy is like a 5 out of 10. You're not feeling great. Okay, great. Let me know. Let the coach know. Or you don't even have to let us know. You can just, tell us, just let us know and just be honest. I'm not feeling too great today. My legs still hurting. I didn't have a good night's sleep last night. The kid was keeping me up. I had 2 hours sleep because the baby was crying all night, whatever it is. Auto regulate your training. So that could literally be, like I said, you got 4 sets of 10 tomorrow. Let's say you only do 3 sets of 8, just like a simple fix. That way, then you're still getting something out of it. You haven't missed the training session. You still trained, but you're just, you're auto-regulating. You're making a small little change. It sounds, a bit daft potentially, but it's only a small change. But these small changes, a longer training week, especially if you train with, 2, 3, 4 days a week consistently as well. If your subjective measures are down, that can make a huge difference in how you're feeling, which means then the following week, then you're in a better position, you're in a better environment to be able to push a little bit harder. Okay, so something to think about within your training, auto-regulate. So give your mood and your energy a rating. And then if obviously if it's lower than what it should be, consistently, just auto-regulate your training. And just, be accountable to it. You don't have to train hard all the time. I don't do it. Sam doesn't do it. Zoe, Amy, Dylan, we don't all train hard all the time. We'd like to think we do, but it's hard. Okay. So what we do, we auto-regulate. We make small little changes, even variations. Say now tomorrow is a barbell back squat. You may find it easier just on a goblet squat because your lower back's giving you a little bit of jip. Things like this, those small little tweaks allow you to train and allow you to recover. And that's something that you can do today. Okay. And I put down there as well, deload to reload, rest to digest. I love deload to reload. I think it's such a sick saying from sports science again. But you're deloading to reloading. You're deloading to reload. Think of a shotgun. You're reloading it to fire the pistol. So deload this week, auto-regulate, take some intensity off. So next week now you can push it even harder. Okay. We're all here for a long period of time. This isn't just about the 6 week challenge. This isn't just about, making, a short-term fix. We're all here, I like to say we're training for life. That's the bigger picture. That's why we're all here. We've all got our own little individual goals and our goalposts, but ultimately we're here to train for life. Okay. So when you follow this, it makes it a lot easier to consistently turn up. Okay. And the last one then is like your active recovery method. So I put down the steps, yoga, Pilates, movement, just move your body. It could be a case where you wake up tomorrow, you're absolutely just, written off for whatever reason. Okay, great. Book yourself on for yoga on Saturday or do an interactive workout on YouTube, or just go out and just walk. Movement is so incredibly good for the body. Okay. Motion is lotion, and that's a genuine, it's not just some expression. It weighs a lot. It means a lot, doesn't it? Being able to move your body is meditation for the body. So keep that in mind. Okay. What we want to think about when I can't move this out of the way. What we want to think about is the Goldilocks principle. Okay, so we all know the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. She didn't go for the porridge that was too cold or the porridge that was too hot. She went for the one right in the middle, the one that was just right. Okay, and that's what training is. That's where you auto-regulate. That's where you make those little changes, and you make that consistently. Yeah, so Goldilocks principle. So what do we need to do that will, one, allow us to improve our physical qualities? So physical qualities, strength, muscle building, fat loss, whatever it is, whatever you're training for. Okay. Whatever will allow us to improve our physical qualities. And two, avoid diminishing returns. So diminishing returns, all the symptoms of overtraining or going down that route. Okay. We want to avoid that. We want to find that balance where we're avoiding that, but we're just pushing enough where our body's creating that sort of adaptation. Okay. Like I said, remember that seesaw analogy? It's all about balance. Yeah. If you push too hard, something's going to give. And unfortunately, we're all going to get older. So the harder that's going to be. Okay. We've got to find that balance. Why has that gone backwards? Okay, a little bit about periodized training, and sort of how this is important. Obviously, we cover this as coaches when I'm writing your programs. This is something that we cover, and it's not just a bunch of exercises put together, even though it may seem like that sometimes. But there's a lot of science behind it, and there's a lot of models and there's a lot of theories. There's a lot of ways about training. Now, periodized training, just think of periodized as a plan. That's all it is. It's a plan to get you from A to B. Okay. Now, the way that we like to do it is we like to do what's called undulating. So let's look at the graph. I'm not very good at this. Let's look at this little diagram here. Okay. So where the blue line represents intensity, so the weight, the green line then is volume. So the amount of reps or sets. Okay. Now, over time, what we're trying to do here. So let's call that training phase 1, 2, 3, 4. You get the idea. Okay. What we're trying to do, intensity goes up. There's a relationship where volume goes down. This is where you have that, again, that relationship where I spoke about earlier, fitness fatigue. You're allowing that Goldilocks principle, that balance where you can train to you can train to a certain point where the volume is low, and then we'll just switch it. Okay, that's what periodized training is, and that's a model that we go for. Now, it's not important for you to make changes because this is something that we already do at SOS anyway, but it's just for your understanding because unstructured training, if you just randomly turn up to the gym and just do a random workout, you've just found one on YouTube or you just found your favorite influencer, they've just done it, whatever it is. Yeah, that's great. It gives you an idea, but over time, unstructured training has been shown to lead to plateaus, injuries, or even burnout. And this is over a long period of time. This is why we train with such structure. Okay, so structured periodized training optimizes your performance and your recovery. So you've got the two here on that seesaw. We're not doing this. Okay, it's just that fine little balance. Okay, and over time, you just have that line, that sort of progression line over a long period of time, slowly reaching up. Okay. So key takeaways for this one. Try to keep it as short as I can. Key takeaways. Training and recovery must work together for the optimal results. Structure within your training, obviously we cover that, but structure within your week, which also means your nutrition protocol, your sleep, your stress management, all that sort of structure keeps the progression sustainable. So we need to find that structure and we need to stick to it. Consistency and balance are the key to the long-term success. Yeah, you got to find what works for you and you got to be able to maintain it. Okay. And the last one then is just train smart, we all train hard, which is great. But what I want to do and what I challenge you to do from today onwards is to recover hard. Yeah, recover even harder. Take your recovery seriously. Don't keep hammering at the same nail. Understand cortisol and understand how that will affect your body, not just physically, but mentally as well. And yeah, guys, honestly, just train smart. Like I said, we've got the program, but you can auto regulate. You can do better recovering. You can do better with your nutrition, your sleep. Try it. I challenge you, auto-regulate your training, go for a walk, try Pilates, do like an interactive yoga workout at home. If you're not feeling great, try it and try it without feeling too guilty. Because I think that's where we all fall. I fall into it sometimes as well. If I don't do a workout, I feel guilty. But if I'm coming down with something, I know I'm training smart. I'm thinking long term. I'm here for the long game. I'm not here for, a short-term bout. I want to be doing this, for the rest of my life. So it would make sense if I train smart. Does anyone have any questions? We're going to open the floor up now. So if anyone has any questions, pop into the chat and we'll go from there. If not, I'll just leave it there.